dismantling racist development norms, like I said, using generic and harmful poverty porn to raise money for institutions when that money isn't going to the people that you're showing on your social media or in your marketing materials. I also think, like I said, paying people significantly less because they don't live in North America or Europe. There's a lot of reasons why people think that this is appropriate, and I think it's actually quite demoralizing and problematic, especially for the people who always get the shortest end of the stick, which is oftentimes Black women.
Even before the Equity Index, an organization that I talked to recently who said that they are developing their own indicators of racial equity and their own benchmarks, and they're starting right now to come together and to say, where do we want to get to, and to create their own baselines, which is so encouraging, right, for development organizations that are not creating baselines for other people, but creating baselines and indicators for their own behaviors, for their own practices. And so my first suggestion is that there is a targeted effort to ensure more Black people and more minority voices are represented in the leadership of our advocacy and campaigning efforts. And very practically, this means organizations should be deliberate about recruiting more Black people into advocacy director, campaigns director, policy director roles. And I promise I'm not lobbying for myself here, but these mono-ethnic leadership teams and coalitions just cannot continue. And finally, I've seen some examples of positive discrimination, which has never been part of the has not sufficiently been part of the conversations. But I have been in touch with an organization who's made the decision that where you go through a recruitment process and you have more than one candidate that is equally matched, which happens often. How often do you go through a recruitment process and you say all three of them could do the job, or two of the three could do the job? They will appoint the person who comes from a minority background. Practices that I have seen that are encouraging, but one of them is banning all white shortlists, and that's about recognizing the potential for bias. It was based on an organization that recognized that not enough Black and minority ethnic people were coming through, and said, what can we do? And they took the decision to ban all white panels. And they said that if we cannot make a sufficiently diverse panel internally, we'll bring that expertise in externally.
Probably an easy question. I feel like hiring more Black people, hiring more Black women in positions of leadership, being intentional about that is the thing to do, because what we've seen is institutions, did our host leave? Oh no, okay. What we've seen is institutions who are doing things that the optics are there, giving people Juneteenth off, in the US, recognizing in Europe that there's poverty porn has been used in certain ways, recognizing on the continent that inequitable pay scales are something to address. But now it's like moving towards action. I don't think any of these institutions that are inherently racist and honestly and anti-Black in a lot of ways will be able to move forward authentically without Black people in positions of leadership. And I want to center that because I don't want us I don't want all these amazing Black women we walk out of here and what everyone heard is, wow, all these steps that my all-white institution can do to like be authentic. It's like, you can't be authentic with no Black people in positions of leadership. And so until you get Black people and people of color and people who represent the communities you say you're in service of in positions of leadership, I want to know from the sisters on this call and my co-panelists, can we ever actually anyone be authentic if your leadership doesn't represent the communities you say you're in service of and that you care about and that you love? And so I would say hire more Black people if you're working on the continent, more Africans, more African women.
And then the second thing, in line with hiring more Black people in leadership, we're not looking at boards enough. All organizations have boards. And a lot of time, the visible minorities that people hire are in leadership positions. But when we get back to funding, the funding decisions are oftentimes made or signed off at the board level. And many of the organizations the big ones, the small ones that we look at, the boards are really not diverse. And when they are diverse, that work of just accepting where the world is starts at that level, and then it gives permission to even the leadership, even if your CEO is a Black woman, to actually be able to run this organization with authenticity and being herself, not feeling like she has to fight all the time with not only her board, but even people in her own leadership team.
Secondly, I think we have to integrate a much stronger analysis of race in our campaigns, particularly those campaigns that focus on the underlying causes of poverty. So it's not enough to say that poverty is sexist or because I'm a girl. That we have to go a step further and interrogate the intersection of poverty, racism, and gender inequities.
Everybody needs to wake up. You have to take a look inside. What does your HR structure look like when you're deploying a team of people to a country? Is it primarily white, and then you just hire a local team for your, sub-administrative or implementation so that you can get buy-in into communities? All of this has to be addressed, and all of this has to change.
When we look at ourselves, and I say for myself, I self-center as well, because you get to a point where like, you're bullying the race card again, you're doing this again, and you're the angry Black. There's so much of that we have carried for generations and generations, but because we've spent our time making the other feel safe, feel comfortable, we don't want to make them uncomfortable, it has created a space where we're responsible for how everybody else is at ease. We have moved a little bit, and we're still not there, where sexual harassment in the workplace has become something that we can raise. Depending on where you sit, again, it is not where it should be, has become what we can raise without the automatic, how can you bring that up? And if we don't get to a place where the microaggressions, the major aggressions that we live as Black people in the workplace and international development, especially in a sector that because it tries to help feels I'm so good, we could do nothing wrong, then we're not going to be able to move that conversation forward. And I look forward to our organization creating these safe spaces that are not just going to be because one is accusing the other of doing that, but recognizing that this is a difficult thing for people to carry, that it has been difficult, it continues to be so, and raising it is oftentimes met with the level of guilt or discomfort that somebody carries and their unwillingness to deal with it.
To decolonize international development is an act of love, and this concept I borrowed from Dr. Rosalias Mesa, and she is a Mexicana psychologist who believes that if you are working within a white patriarchal system, rooted in the colonization of Black and brown people, it is a radical act of love to make space for the deconstruction of those paradigms.